A few days ago, Warren Buffett just said something on a CNBC interview that should terrify anyone who holds stocks as a 401k or any sort of retirement plan, really. And honestly, after 25 years in the market, even I find it terrifying because Buffett is selling almost everything he has. And it's not because he's predicting a crash. It's kind of worse than that. It's because there's almost nothing worth buying anymore. But I said almost nothing worth buying because he's also just buying one stock, which we need to talk about. So let's break down exactly why Buffett is selling, the one stock he's buying, and what it means for your portfolio. Okay, so Buffett has been a net seller of stocks for 14 quarters in a row. That's 3.5 years of selling more than he buys. Apple was his biggest position in 2023. He owned 950 million shares of it. Now he owns only 228 million shares of it, selling around about 75% of the biggest position he's ever built in his career. His second largest position was Bank of America. He owned just over 1 billion shares of that, and he held it for more than a decade. He's now cut that in half to 513 million shares. When you look at the rest of his portfolio, it turns into a list of sells. Visa is gone, MasterCard's gone, Amazon is gone, United Health is absolutely gone. So he sold a lot and he's got a lot of criticism because of it. Every time I talk about Buffett selling, people say, oh, he's been selling, so he's a loser because the market's been going up. But the way I look at it is that he's been taking profit on the way up and banking billions and billions of dollars. His cash pile is now bigger than his entire stock portfolio. $397 billion sat in cash against $263 billion still in shares. So if that's not a win, I don't know what is. I mean, the guy has $500 billion. And think about what Berkshire Hathaway actually is for a second. Berkshire Hathaway, by the way, is Warren Buffett's company. He was formerly CEO. Now he's no longer CEO because he stepped down and gave his position to Greg Abel. But what is that company? Well, it's a company whose entire job, I mean, its entire reason for existence is to own bits of other companies, which is funny because now instead of owning other companies, they hold mostly cash. And that's never happened in 60 years of this company's existence. And that has me thinking, and it should have you thinking, if Buffett is not comfortable holding stocks, should we be? And that's a good question, so let's answer it. Now, look, the reason Buffett is selling is not as simple as it seems. Everyone thinks Buffett is calling a crash, that he knows something that we don't, and that the market is about to collapse any day now, which, by the way, is possible. I mean, have you looked at SpaceX, by the way? It's down like 44%. But Buffett doesn't really predict crashes. He always said that he doesn't like timing the market. So everyone's been sat waiting for 2 years for a prediction that never really came. And finally, on Tuesday, he sat down with a CNBC reporter for an hour and opened up about everything. So there's no more speculation. Now we know what Warren Buffett's thinking. So one of the most interesting parts of this entire interview was about halfway through when the interviewer asks him about Google. Because the weird thing is, while Buffett's been selling almost everything, he has built an enormous position in Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. So he started buying it in late 2025, about 4.3 billion worth, which to him is like pocket money, really. Then in the first 3 months of this year, he tripled that position. And then in June, he put another 10 billion in on Google. The position's now worth about 30 billion. He built that from nothing in 9 months while selling everything else. And everyone assumed that it was Greg Abel, the new CEO I talked about. He took over on the 1st of January of this year. So the story wrote itself when he took over. It was the old man sat in cash because he's frightened, and the young lad who's taken over, he's buying AI because he isn't scared. But see, the interviewer asked him about that. She said, is this Greg Abel's doing? Is this his mark? Is this how he's changing your portfolio? And Buffett says, no.
I appreciate it.
So he picked it. He picked Google. He says that Abel is the decider now, but that neither of them does anything without the other's approval. So they talk every day. But the Google position was Warren Buffett's idea, essentially. So the 95-year-old is the one who bought the AI stock. And that's where it gets interesting, because listen to how he talks about Google in this interview. I encourage you to watch it. I'll link it below. He doesn't sound excited. He says, and this is a direct quote, I don't like it as well as at least 4 or 5 other businesses that we own. So he built a $30 billion position in something that he likes less than 4 or 5 other companies he already owns. Then the interviewer says, well, it's your 3rd biggest holding right now. And he pushes back on that. And he says, no, it's probably number 5 or 6, because he counts the businesses he owns outright, like the railroad, the same way he counts his shares. Basically, if he owns 100% of a company and that company is worth, let's say, 50 billion, he considers that bigger than his his holding in Google, which is worth 30 billion, which makes sense really. But the thing is, he's talking it down. He's pointing out that his massive new AI position in Google is smaller and duller than the interviewer than she thinks it is. So why do it? Why get into Google? The interviewer asks him exactly that.
But I'm talking about why Alphabet versus the other Magnificent Seven or the other, hyperscalers who are doing the same thing, spending a lot of money, Amazon, Microsoft, whoever it may be, to try and win in this position of AI.
Yeah, well, I don't want to sit around knocking the others. They don't have any choice.
Yeah. To spend like this, you mean?
They're now playing a game in many cases or some cases, where they're playing a game they don't want to play.
And let me explain what he means, because it's kind of brilliant, really. Picture a restaurant, same street for 50 years with the same kitchen, same food. It makes money every single year. It doesn't need anything from you. You just own it, right? You own the restaurant and it makes you money. That is the type of business that Buffett spent his entire life buying. Coca-Cola is the perfect example. Same fizzy drink since 1886. Nobody's had to reinvent it, and he's owned it for 45 years without having a thing to do with running it. Now, someone opens up a restaurant across the road from your restaurant with a massive new kitchen, twice the size, makes food in half the time, it's better than your food. So now you need to upgrade your kitchen or you lose your customers. So you upgrade it. Then he sees your kitchen, the guy across the road, and he upgrades his kitchen. So then you upgrade again. Neither of you wanted this kitchen arm race. This is such a weird example, but I think you get what I'm saying. Neither of you wanted this kitchen arm race. You just both wanted to sell food. And the crazy part is the kitchen now costs you more than the food ever made you. And this is Google right now. Let me show you Google's accounts. So Google generates about 174 billion of cash a year from actually running its business. This includes search, ads, and YouTube, all of it, where you're watching this right now. So that's the food. Google is spending between 180 and 190 billion this year on building stuff. Data centers, chips, power, and cooling. That's the kitchen. And they've already told everyone that they are investing more money into the kitchen next year because all their competitors are. Now Google is about to be the most profitable company in the history of the world. It has never needed anybody's money. Companies like that buy their own shares back. That's what they do. Except on the 1st of June, it did the opposite. It announced that it was raising 80 billion by selling stock. And that's on top of the 85 billion of debt it had already raised in the previous year. So one of the buyers of this debt was Warren Buffett. 10 billion straight in at $351 a share. So the man who won't touch the stock market wrote a $10 billion check to the most profitable company on earth because they needed money. Now put yourself in Google's chair or Amazon's chair. You're running one of those companies. You do not want to spend $190 billion a year on AI. Nobody wants that. Your investors don't want it, and your board certainly doesn't want it. But if you don't spend it, and the company across the road does, if you're Google and Amazon spends it, then they're going to get to the finish line first. They're going to win the AI race. So you have to spend it. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And every single one of them is sat in their own chair having that exact same thought. And this goes back to what Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, used to say, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. Well, there it is. So nobody's going to stop. Why would they? Nobody wants to be the loser in this race. No one wants to be the guy who stopped or the company who stopped. Oh, and there's something else that Buffett said, and this is really, really important. He said that Nick has released this awesome new guide on how to retire by 2036, and it's completely free. There's a link to it below. Click it after you finish watching this video. You get the guide plus a weekly newsletter from me. I lied. Buffett didn't say that. I said that, but whatever. Anyway, let's talk about what Buffett actually said. He said that he can stick a huge pile of money into government bonds and collect 20, 30, 40 billion dollars a year, risk-free in yield, doing absolutely nothing, just sat there. So for him, a business is only worth owning if it earns a lot more than that and keeps doing so for a long, long time. Coca-Cola clears that bar by doing nothing at all. I mean, Coke just sells Coke and that's all it does. And, other products, of course. The AI giants are spending hundreds of billions a year, every year, forever, to maybe turn a profit on AI. And then the interviewer pushes him a bit further. And Buffett starts talking about IBM. He explains that historically, IBM would have loved to carry on playing the game it played in the 1930s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. They owned the whole thing. It was all theirs. They were the only player in town. Then somebody turned up and said, we'll get you a better result. And that was that. IBM now has competition. Then he talks about his grandfather's grocery shop, which he worked at as a kid. It was one store. 1869 it opened. It was a store still in 1969. It didn't go anywhere for 100 years. And then he brings up A&P. Nobody under 60 remembers A&P, but in the 1930s, they were the biggest grocer in America. And Buffett says that they had, and I'm quoting here, he says that they had a very, very, very good hand, and then it just disappeared. That's what he's telling you. He's not saying that the market crashes next Tuesday. He's saying that the kind of business that he spent 60 years buying is going extinct. And this is the scary part, because the stock market is changing. It used to be that you would buy a business based on fundamentals. The company used to spend money, but make money. But the companies that own the market these days, they don't work like that anymore. They have to spend 180 billion a year just to stay level with each other in a game that nobody wants to play. And that's why Buffett is selling. The thing he knows how to buy barely exists anymore. So he bought the best of a bad bunch. That's why he's not excited about it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Nick, this is just an old man who doesn't understand technology. He missed Amazon. He sat out of Google for 20 years and he admits that it was a mistake. Why do we care what Warren Buffett thinks? And that's fair. And Buffett will kind of agree with you here. He said it himself in the interview. Why should I expect to make money in all kinds of things I don't understand? But he's not saying that Google is a bad company. He just put 30 billion into it. He's saying that the economics of the whole market got worse and he still has to put money somewhere. He has all this money, he has to put it somewhere. And there's another side to this though. Google is doing brilliantly right now. I mean, revenue is up 22% in the first quarter and the cloud business is up 63%. They've got over $460 billion of orders on the books that they can't even physically fulfill yet. So nobody's refusing to lend them money. They are raising it because demand is bigger than the supply. So look, what do we do with all this information? It was an interesting interview. You should watch it, but what do we do with this information? Let's get the uncomfortable bit out of the way first. You can't copy Warren Buffett. He has a private phone call that he could just phone up Google and say, hey, I want to buy your shares at this price. And Google says, yeah, sure, Warren, we're going to give you shares at this price. He gets a special price. He gets a special phone call. We don't have that. And his time horizon is forever. The guy's 95 years old. Like, let's face it, he probably doesn't have that long left. Unfortunately, he's a living legend in the investment world. But he can live through a 50% drop without blinking. It doesn't matter to him. 50% off 30 billion is down 15 billion temporarily. You can't follow his investment portfolio, but you can use that information to your advantage. That's what I've done most of my career. I'm playing a much smaller game than Warren Buffett, obviously, and I know it, but understanding what the big players are doing gives me an advantage. So what's the advantage? Well, go look at what's actually in your portfolio right now. Specifically if you're holding an index fund. If you got an S&P tracker in your pension or in your retirement account, your 401k, whatever, and most of you do, by the way, you're not diversified. You think you own 500 companies because it's the S&P 500, but Apple is worth 4.9 trillion, Nvidia 4.8, Google 4.1, Microsoft 2.9. You might even have exposure to SpaceX at this point, which is down 44%. I mean, what a scam that was, allegedly. But yeah, 8 to 10 companies make up over 30 trillion of a $71 trillion index. And they are all spending hundreds of billions a year in an arms race that no one wanted to enter, where the outcome is uncertain. And it's looking more and more like they probably won't make money from AI. This is where your pension is sat right now. Me, I don't own Google. I'm not sat here telling you to buy Google because Warren Buffett's buying it. I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is what I always do, which is I'm being boring. I'm 30% gold and silver right now. I've got 40% cash just because I want to buy more gold and silver and a few stocks. As far as stocks, I've only got defensive stuff and I'm just sat there waiting. The one action Buffett has taken for 14 quarters straight is de-risking for the most part. He's got $397 billion sat in government bonds getting paid about 4% to do absolutely nothing. It's boring until it's the only reason you've still got any money. Instead of being heavy in bonds, I'm heavy in gold and silver, and that's worked out pretty well for me. And a lot of people would call that boring, but I don't think it's boring. And like I've said, I hold 40% cash right now, but that's just because I'm looking to buy more gold, silver, and a select few stocks. When it comes to stocks, I barely hold anything in the US anymore. I just don't trust the AI bubble is going to keep growing at the pace that it is. And you might say I'm dumb for that, but I rode the AI bubble from 2022 through to late 2025, and I made my money. I'm not interested in eking every little percentage point out of the AI run, because in my experience, when the day comes that the AI bubble pops, you're gonna wish you had gotten out a year earlier. And one thing that Buffett said that stuck with me, he said it's tougher to find value when everybody is preferring gambling. And he said that there's more money in cultivating gamblers than there is in cultivating investors. So what's your plan? I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment below. If you haven't got one, check out the free guide I have linked below and my newsletter. I'll see you in the next one.